Could be the shortest employment you've ever had, if that's how our opening clip comes out, Ryan. Welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Travel Alert. This week we've got some exciting news, Paul, about what's happening in the business travel space. What are expenses doing? Are they going up? Are they going down? We've got some good numbers to share with our audience today. We've also got more information on baggage. Aren't you tired of dealing with baggage fees? Seems like that's the top headline in travel recently. So, yeah.
You bet. This is the Weekly Travel Alert provided by Executive Travel. Every Tuesday, we send out 100,000 emails to our customers and friends around the world. And we've started the Weekly Travel Alert podcast edition, which started over, 5 months ago?
Probably 4 or 5 months ago now, yeah.
All right, we've got some great news. Are you ready to go?
Let's roll.
Okay. Paul, the headlines for this week's Weekly Traveler reads, the cost of the average business trip has skyrocketed, get this, $1,446. So we work with a company called Cornerstone, and they do a travel index, and they calculate what the airfares are, the hotels are, the
rental cars
are for a business trip, an average 2 or 3 day business trip. Get this, $1,446 is the average for a business trip. Most people don't realize it costs that much to send an associate out on the road.
And that doesn't even take into consideration the meals and entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to look at what that is. That, I think, from other things I've seen, that averages out to about $100 per person per day as well.
Yeah, you're probably getting closer to $1,800 or $2,000
exactly.
when you think
just on a 2-night trip.
So we tell people, the easiest way to control your costs in business travel is to first deal with, should that person be on the road, mm-hmm. right? Should they be using Google Meets or Zoom or whatever? Because the costs keep going up and up and up. So let's break this down a little bit. We found out that the average cost in January for airline tickets was $750.
That's domestic.
That's domestic.
Now,
international.
Actually, international
wasn't too bad.
And that's the interesting thing regarding this was we were getting tickets from here to Italy for $800. So that domestic airline ticket being the same cost as what you could go explore another part of the world.
And the hotel costs were $540. That's for between a 2 and a 3 day stay, which the hotel cost seems to be inflating faster than a lot of the airfares in some cases.
Yeah, they are, and that's where a lot of travel programs, that's something they can look at when they're looking at their costs and figure out, how can we change what our policy entails so that we can have more controls over that increase in price.
The rental cars were the next in line, and they were $206, so that's probably about a 2.5, 3 day stay.
Yeah.
And the cost with all the taxes.
But I think the key there is, the airline ticket at $750 was up 17% from December. The car is actually up 18%. So that was the greatest increase month over month was in the car rental.
And then we also saw in January a really big spike in the number of business trips. It was up 17%. So compared with December and January, business travelers, when the year starts, they want to hit the road, don't they?
This year in particular, it was usually we get about 2 weeks worth of a soft start to the year. But this year there were storms going on all over the country, and it just was madness from the get-go.
You watched our daily calls
mm-hmm.
that come into our executive travel, and you said they've really been spiking to some of the highest we've ever seen.
We have just in the last couple of weeks had the biggest call volume days that we've ever had in our history. So yeah, it's been it's a blessing, but it also causes for, how do we make sure that we focus on that service offering? Because that's really our key. That's one of our differentiators is we are a service company, not a fulfillment company.
You bet. And it's been very interesting. We've been in business going on our 38th year later this year. And I was looking back, our sales in 2 days are more than they were for the whole year, our first year in business. Isn't that amazing,
Yeah,
Paul?
it is. It is.
It's just to see the growth, and we've benefited. We've been listed on the
Inc. 500,
5,000 list 4 times as one of the fastest growing companies. And one year we were the fastest growing travel management company in the industry. And so we're seeing that continued on as our growth continues, and it's even fun.
Well, and I think the key to that, and as anybody that is a client would recognize, is it's our people. I mean, our people make it so that they travel, which is so complex, becomes something that's easy to deal with. And then when something does go awry, they're there and they've got that empathy and they want to help. And Absolutely. So, again, going back to service, it's not about fulfillment. It's about we're here when you need us and we care. We want to try to come up with a solution for you.
Yeah, very personalized. Number 2 on this week's Weekly Travel Alert, the headline reads, "The dominoes continue to fall as United and Delta join American increasing bag fees." Paul, first American came out, says we're going up $5 from 35 to 40 and from 45 to 50 for the second bag. And guess what? A day later, only took one day, and United jumped into the wagon. And guess what happened now? Delta. They held out for about a week, and they said, "Hey, we're going to join it because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether we can make a lot more billions by charging that extra $5 and $10."
So, and we've talked a lot about on other podcasts, doing carry-ons only, traveling just with a carry-on. But the reality is anymore, the planes and the overheads are so full that typically you get to the gate, and if your bag is small enough that you can get it through security, then if you get to the gate, a lot of times they're going to ask for people to gate check. So you can check your bag without paying the fees if you have a strategy to getting that bag through security.
That's a great strategy. But anyway, that kind of relates to the third item on this week's Weekly Traveler. Will carry-on fees be the next revenue grab for the airlines? Think about it, Paul. They're charging you now to check them on. What's the most logical next step to generate another couple $2 billion? What if they charge you and you've got to have a little green tag on your bag to put that up into the carry-on space, and they charge you $10 or $20 for that? I see that. That's scary, because that's all I do is take carry-on. I hope I am wrong, but I see several billions of dollars that the airlines could generate in revenue if that took place.
I think that overhead bin space is an asset that
valuable.
The airlines have. That to me as a traveler, as a regular traveler, that's the primary thing that I enjoy about the status that I've got, is because I can get on the plane early enough that I know my bag is going to have space near me on the airplane. So I think there is value to that, and I think that's likely that, as they continue to figure out how do they maximize their return, that's potential. They've actually already done that with certain fare classes like basic economy, where you can't, the only thing that you can have is something that will fit underneath the seat in front of you.
But they don't really enforce that.
It's tough to
much.
enforce that. However, they do at the Manor, I think now with United, that's Group 6. So if there is no overhead space, they would easily be able to recognize who is part of that basic economy. But
and that's another thing with these regional jets. I hate regional jets. They have these little overhead bins that are 6 inches. I can't fit my briefcase in there. I can't fit my carry-on in there. And I can't even fit my briefcase under the seat in front of me. And so last week I flew from Cincinnati to Denver on a big jet, and they had massive overhead bins.
And they have been increasing the size of the overheads on the newer planes, for sure.
And you can turn them sideways and hold like 8 of them in a bin. It's fantastic. So the Boeing 737 MAX has great overheads. The 787 has great. The 777 has great. Of course, a lot of the Airbuses have great luggage overhead bins. But when I get in those regional jets, it just bugs the heck out of me.
I was thinking of you because I'm uncomfortable, and obviously we're a little different in size. But I got on a regional jet earlier this week, and I'm a Husker basketball fan, and so I recognized the father of one of our players, who's 7 foot tall, getting onto this regional jet. I felt so bad for him just watching him try to walk down the aisle. And then I had to go to the back of the plane to use the restroom, and he was stuck next to the window with a guy your size sitting next to him. So I felt so bad for this guy.
Hey, the other thing that I learned with those regional jets is on the seat handles, underneath them, if you
There's a
press that little
button.
button, then they can flip those up, and then you can suddenly, you're not sitting like this, you can sit like a normal human being. So if you're on there, you need extra seats, space, or to breathe a little bit, go on the underside of that armrest.
As long as you don't have one. I noticed just yesterday on my travels home when I did that the guy across the aisle, his was solid down. So
It was solid.
Yep. So he didn't have the ability to do that. So I think you got to make sure you're not like in the 3C and D would have been where he was sitting.
Yeah.
So certain planes are going to have it so that's not. But if you're on the aisle, that could be an option for you.
I used to do that years ago on the older aircraft, and when you put the handle up, there on the back of it would be like this claw that would grab your pants, and several times it's grabbed my pocket and ripped a hole in my pants when I did it. So now it seems like they're better designed, so you don't get caught with your clothing on those. Well, anyway, that's the next revenue grab. I hope I'm wrong. Number 4, the headline reads for this week's Weekly Traveler, sponsored by Executive Travel. Airlines start to fly again to Israel despite the war going on. So just this past week, on March 6th, we saw United Airlines is flying to Tel Aviv. How can that be? That's a war zone. I mean, I just don't see how a publicly traded company could take that kind of risk.
I think reality is there are certain sectors that Israel's got a population that they meet those needs, especially in technologies, because they're so advanced with their technologies that, business has got to go on. And I would imagine that's what has pushed United to go this route. So
well, yeah, but
it is questionable.
I don't know how you can justify that just because you're in a war zone and, you got crazies doing everything of shooting rockets and all over the place, and I don't know if I'd want to fly on that flight.
It'll be interesting to see if they keep operating it or if it's a short-lived effort.
The number 5 headline in this week's Weekly Traveler reads, Paul, the Sheraton hotel brand seems to have fallen off a cliff. It was been 8 years ago when Marriott bought Starwood Hotels, and Starwood has, they've got Sheraton, right? Westin, which is one of my favorites. And they've got St. Regis. They've got Le Méridien, W Hotels. And, of course, the flagship was always the Sheraton. And where is Sheraton? Nobody stays at a Sheraton anymore. The only one I can think of is when I was stuck in Houston, they give you the airlines give you an overnight ticket at the Sheraton down there, but it's about probably 30 years old.
I was going to say, I think that's probably part of it. Because of the adjustment, I don't think that they've invested in maintaining the quality of Sheraton.
Yeah.
With the Marriott name being the primary brand, and then the Westin and St. Regis, some of those that have been more prominent as far as what they had to deliver. Sheraton is just easier to just roll over into a Marriott.
Yeah, and they kind of got their branding colors are brown, and it's kind of a boring, dated feel to it. So I'm hoping Marriott will say, hey, it's time to regenerate this brand of Sheraton, which is known worldwide. And there's probably more Sheraton hotels internationally. That's probably how they're known. But it's time for a complete do-over with Sheraton. And but they've got some great brands. The St. Regis that we stay in China is so cool in Beijing. The Westin hotels all around the world. I love their heavenly beds.
The
Do you
heavenly
like them?
beds, yes, yes.
I want to take those bed sheets home with me every time I go to a Westin.
Yeah. Sometimes you just want to go to a Westin so you can get a good night's rest.
Yeah.
You don't need a reason other than that.
Isn't it amazing, Paul, that the hotels have forgot that a basic desire is to sleep good in a hotel. And so what do? They put Hard Rock cheap bed mattresses on a lot of hotels, when Westin was smart enough to say, hey, let's address the number one issue is people want to rest, to sleep.
If you get a deep sleep, then a lot of times you won't notice some of the other things that are going on.
Yeah.
I always get frustrated by the lack of insulation. So you hear all the clanging of doors in the hallways and that type of stuff, or the people in the next room. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. If I'm knocked out cold, then I'm not going to notice any of that stuff.
Hey, pretty soon we're going to come upon my annual list of hotel pet peeves, Paul. And I've got a whole list of them, of all the things that bug me with a hotel. And you're touching base on some of those.
I think the sad thing about that is your list just continues to get longer, which means the hotels aren't dealing with any of the issues. So
No, they're not. So anyway, well, thank you again. We've got, I want to remind people, we've got a great tour. A lot of people are going to Greece. It's been identified as one of the top destinations for 2024. Executive Travel has several tours going to Greece. We've got one for both females and males, or couples. We've got one for just women. And we've got a cool one that's called Eat, Live, Love Tour, which is for women of the Midwest, which is all women traveling together. And so if you're interested in any of those, please call our company, Executive Travel, 402-435-8888. You can also look at our website at executivetravel.com.
I think there's a button for the women of the Midwest.
Yes, there is.
So you can go check out all the tours, not just the Greece tours.
I think it's like 50 tours they're doing, which is just amazing. But Greece is, obviously, we spoke several weeks ago about one of the top 10 destinations for 2024. You and I are both going to Italy in a couple weeks. We're looking forward. That's usually the number one destination that we see for travelers from the Midwest anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this week's edition of the Weekly Travel Alert. We've got Paul Glenn and Steve Glenn, and we enjoy sharing the Weekly Travel Alert every week with you on our podcast.
Please like, subscribe, share, add any comments or questions below so we can deal with the topics that are of interest to you on a future podcast. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.